Before I get into this, I want to preface by saying my opinion should probably mean nothing to you, and I'm only making this for my own peace of mind, for the people who I looked up to and learned from that cannot be here to speak their mind. Because I believe that when some things are so bad, they must be talked about before those things are accepted as normal and to make change. I fear that the country I've spent my life in and learned to love is headed in a dark direction, because when accountability disappears, lethal force stops becoming an exception and starts becoming policy. That being said, don't let my perspective forcibly change yours. I will be referencing the videos of these incidents, but I will not be showing them. They are available in the description, however. I did do research for this video, but I implore you to do your own. Think about it critically for yourself, and speak to others who think differently to come to your own conclusions. Enjoy. A month into ICE's Operation Metro Surge, and 1 week into 2026, on January 7th at 9:37 a.m., veteran ICE officer Jonathan Ross, in front of onlookers, one being her wife Becca Good, sent 3 shots in under a second directed in Nicole Renee Good's SUV. All 3 of these shots made contact with her and would later lead to her death. Her vehicle, driven lifelessly, cruised forward and crashed into a car and a light pole a short distance down the road. Agent Ross then informs people to call 911 and stays on the scene of the crime for at least a minute after. ICE agents then make a perimeter around the SUV and block viewers from coming closer. This includes a physician asking to check for a pulse and provide medical assistance. They were told, "I don't care, back up," and 6 minutes after the first shot was fired, EMS arrives on the scene. The ICE agents that were there for the shooting had fled. New York Times records show that her pulse was irregular when medical services arrived, but shortly later there would be no pulse. 8 minutes after being shot, she receives her first contact of CPR, and 7 minutes after that is placed into an ambulance, taken to a medical center, and pronounced dead. The following day, the head of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension said that the FBI had revoked their access to evidence of the shooting. This directly reversed an earlier agreement made saying that a joint investigation would happen. Nicole had just dropped off her 6-year-old child and was a mile from her home in Minneapolis. She was a U.S. citizen and had nothing on her criminal record besides a previous vehicle inspection violation. To share both sides of this tragedy, the public info we have about Jonathan Ross. He was a member of the Indiana National Guard from 2002 to 2008. He was a machine gunner in Iraq from 2004 to 2005. He started work for U.S. Border Patrol in 2007, and court documents state his starting date for ICE to be 2016. Ross himself says he was also a firearms instructor, active shooter instructor, field intelligence officer, and even a member of the St. Paul's Special Response Team in Minnesota. This is enough to label Ross as a veteran officer, like news outlets such as NBC have done. Now, one benefit to living in the digital age in a world of cell phones is that everything I just said is very easy to find and well documented online. So well documented, in fact, that Jonathan Ross himself approached the vehicle with a phone in hand. That being said, a veteran should have enough training and should know better. He should also know how risky it is to position himself in front of a vehicle known to be in drive, how dangerous it is to approach upright and stationary rather than taking tactical cover, and the wrongness of shooting multiple rounds in such close proximity through glass and with a phone in his offhand. The list of his mistakes continues. He also shows a lack of composure when calling Nicole after shooting her, which, if previous information isn't enough, shows the kind of person Agent Ross really is. After the murder, Minneapolis schools were canceled for the week in fear of children's safety. Sadly, this is not where that story ends. Less than 3 weeks later, on the 24th, in the same city under siege by Operation Metro Surge, ICU nurse for the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs Alex Preddy was also shot multiple times and murdered in broad daylight by Minnesota ICE agents. Agents were stalking a different victim and tried following them into a donut shop, but the doors were locked by staff before they could come in. Alex at this time was across the street and carrying his own registered handgun, which was properly holstered at his hip. According to then Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, the agents involved in this murder were attempting to track down an undocumented immigrant with a significant criminal history. However, after reviewing Minnesota records, this alleged criminal Bovino named actually had nothing on their record besides some traffic violations that this time were over a decade old. He He is, however, an immigrant from Ecuador, but his previous deportation case was also administratively closed 4 years ago. So he tries going into a donut shop. Agents try opening the locked door and call for backup when realizing they can't get in. This causes these masked men to get increasingly aggressive towards onlookers, one of which being Alex Preddy. Alex, along with 2 others, were videoing agents when approached. Less than 30 seconds before the first shot is fired, agents begin pushing civilians, and Preddy walks forward to help. He stands between an agent and a woman being pushed. He does briefly put his hand on the agent's waist, but this is immediately met with pepper spray. After the spray, Alex responds by putting his hand up, the other hand holding his phone and recording. He reaches and attempts to cover the woman for the possibility of more spray, and an agent shoves it again, knocking both Alex and the woman over. Preddy then makes no threatening movements towards anyone when attempting to disengage and pull away. He's pushed and pulled to the ground again, and his arms are pinned above his head. The agent that had previously pepper sprayed him hits him with the canister multiple times, and another, completely different agent that had been focused on spraying the grounded woman turns towards Preddy after hearing he had a gun. This information was shouted 8 seconds after he is pinned to the ground, but 5 seconds later, this agent shoots him at close range. This murderer shot Alex Preddy when 1. He was not in any direct threat, 2. His weapon was already removed, and 3. He was mercilessly pinned to the ground. Video also shows that the shooter had sightline to know that his weapon was no longer on him, whether he witnessed the unequipping or not. He then fires another 3 shots into the back of Preddy, and the agent who initially sprayed Alex also pulls out his firearm, shooting another 6 shots into the back of Preddy as well. 2 trained agents fired a combined 10 shots in under 5 seconds into the back of an already pinned and weaponless American citizen in the streets under 2 miles from his home. The Department of Homeland Security immediately tried to deny and defend themselves by saying Alex had approached agents brandishing a weapon and that the agents fired defensive shots before trying to disarm him. However, my personal viewing of the video, sworn testimony by witnesses, and analysis by BBC shows he never once drew his weapon. Agents then back away from his body and block another physician from providing aid, this time because he was not carrying his physician's license. The physician stated in court that the agents were counting bullet holes in the victim before allowing him to perform CPR. Medics would then arrive and take him to the same center where Renee Good was brought, and he is pronounced dead. The actions of these officers continue to show a lack of understanding and training, and composure, just like the Renee Good murder. What distinguishes these killings are not just the severity, but the continued and consistent failures made by supposedly veteran officers who escalate force quickly and lethal force when under no threat. The reaction made by our government and federal agents is also despicable, trying to deny and defend themselves from video proof. Previously mentioned Commander Gregory Bovino said one of the officers who shot Preddy had been serving for an already 8 years and has had extensive training. He also added that they would, quote, remain Border Patrol agents. However, 2 days after the shooting, it's reported that Bovino had his title of Commander-at-Large stripped and was expected to return to the Border Patrol station in California before retiring. After these killings in Minneapolis, the nation was rightfully enraged, and protests erupted all across the country. Students had walkouts in even the most red-voted states, and most of the misinformation was frequently called out and proven wrong in most instances online. The scrutiny these agencies are facing from the public is just as important. The walkouts and protests and discontent show that people are watching, even in the places where they used to blindly support this administration. Change doesn't happen overnight, but the past shows that accountability happens when the people refuse to be silent and look away. If there's something hopeful I can leave you with, it's that the people pushed back this time, and as long as this continues, this system can be forced into change. I hope you enjoyed this video, whether you agree with me or not. I'm open to all feedback, as I've never done something like this, but I do want to add, these 2 victims are not the only ones. They are white ones. There's a reason these videos were impossible to skip over the days of the shootings, but there are countless others currently facing inhumane control at detention centers, which continue to open across the U.S. When federal agents can kill unarmed U.S. citizens in broad daylight at their home, block medical aid, and still keep their jobs, the problem isn't a few bad decisions or a few bad apples. It's a system that no longer expects a certain standard of training and a system that dodges accountability for the perpetrators that caused this devastation.